Well, we are up to the 12 game day. Um, so I won't be seeing the starts of most of these. I work till 5:30 tonight. That means I'll be home roughly around 6 o'clock. And that means that some of these will already be past the second period at that point. But let's get started. The first game of the night we're going to be looking at is Colorado in Columbus against the Blue Jackets. So the Avalanche are 35, 24, and 7. They're 4, 3, and 3 in their last 10. They've lost their last 2, but their last game they got a point. They got themselves into a tie with LA for the last wild card spot. They've got the number 3 penalty kill in the NHL, and a top penalty kill will definitely help your record. They're in against Columbus, who are 34, 28, and 5. They're 5, 4, and 1 in their last 10. They've won their last 2. They've got the wild card spot, the second wild card spot. They're 2 points ahead of Florida. Korpisalo has been confirmed as the starter tonight. For Columbus, this is a big game. So Colorado's coming in as a team that's got a poor record over the last 10, but really they've been getting better. Just the record hasn't necessarily reflected it yet. And Columbus has got those 2 wins in a row. They are trying to get on a little bit of a streak here. They have to realize that Philly started looking vulnerable again. It's what Philly does. Look really, really good, and then look really, really vulnerable, and then back to really, really good. If Columbus can maintain this streak and somehow get into a third spot in this division, and I still think they likely play Washington. I have a feeling Pittsburgh's going to get that first spot. I like Columbus's chances of winning a round for the first time if they're against Washington in the first round. That's just my personal belief in terms of which teams would match up really well with which teams. And for Colorado, this is a big test on the road. They're in Columbus. Columbus has a decent home record. Colorado's road record is, shall we say, not fantastic, but they've worked on it over the last couple of months. It's not a fantastic road record, and I do wonder if that's going to kind of haunt them tonight. But that's one of those things where we'll have to see. Philly. The Flyers are 34, 22, and 11. They're 6, 3, and 1 in their last 10, but of course they've lost their last 4 in a row. They are third in the division. They're 2 points behind Washington. Ghost Spears got 50 points. The league leader in points on the blue line is Klingberg with 56. So Ghost is there. So I decided to put certain players up here to say that they're in a race for points, goals, or defensemen for points. But Philly's in Boston. Boston's 41, 15, and 8. They're 7 and 3 in their last 10. They've won their last 4 in a row. They are second in their division. They're 5 points ahead of Toronto. Of course, Toronto is not playing tonight. This is one of those games in hand. Boston will be without David Backes. David Backes is serving the first of a 3-game suspension. I did not do a video about that suspension yesterday because to me it's really obvious that it's a worthy suspension. Backes is one of those guys who plays a little bit on the edge, and in that case he crossed it. I've seen comments online from Boston fans saying, oh, it wasn't hit to the head, but it was. Comments regarding, well, that shouldn't have been a suspension, but it is. And, I don't have a problem with it. I don't think it's an overly controversial move, and I don't have a problem with it. The Bruins are number 10 on the power play, and they're number 6 on the penalty kill. And when you're top 10 in both categories, it will help your win-loss record. It's going to be a test for Boston because, of course, they're already without Bergeron. They're already without McAvoy, and now they're without Backes. The good news is, of the 3, Backes is the more complementary player than core player, and core players are what I would call Bergeron and McAvoy. But they'll miss his physicality. They just won't miss him crossing the line. And again, I know there's Bruins fans who will disagree with me on this, but I do think that he crosses the line. Every now and then I do agree that a player on a team that I cheer for does cross that line. And it's a strange thing, but I have seen it. Next up, Winnipeg. The Jets are 40, 17, and 9. They're 8 and 2 in their last 10. They've won their last 3 in a row. They're second in their division, 6 points ahead of Minnesota. Line A has 38 goals right now. So with the hat trick in the shutout win over the Rangers, he got close to Ovechkin. Rocket Richard Trophy, he may very well get in there. They're number 2 on the power play and number 9 on the penalty kill. That lethal power play, Laine is directly responsible for it. Laine's spot on this team has become really more prominent as the season's gone along. He was always getting the ice time, but now his totals have been intimidating. They're taking that intimidating show into Jersey. The New Jersey Devils 34-25-8, 5-5 in their last 10. They won their last game. They're the number 1 wild card. They're 3 points ahead of aforementioned Columbus. Corey Schneider is starting for them. Zacha will not be in the lineup based on the injury he got in their last game. They're number 9 on the power play. They're number 8 on the penalty kill. So again, you're top 10 in both categories. You have a decent shot. And as long as New Jersey can maintain those numbers, they have a decent shot. And they're going to get a test on that number 8 penalty kill with the number 2 power play coming in, much like their number 9 power play will be a test for the number 9 penalty kill for Winnipeg. Winnipeg's been very good on the road for the last month. That will be tested tonight in Jersey against the Devils. But if I had to make a bet, I'd say, you know what, Winnipeg and Nashville have been fantastic for a month, and I wouldn't be surprised if Winnipeg wins this game. And that's not to besmirch the reputation of the New Jersey Devils. It's just reality that Winnipeg right now is in that conversation as to whether or not they're Stanley Cup contenders. Again, I have to see them in the playoffs before I can go out and say, oh yeah, no, Stanley Cup, they're going to make the conference championship. Until they're in a 7-game series where hockey changes, I have difficulty just projecting them to be this fantastic team in the playoffs that they've been in the regular season. But being that in the regular season is a win in and of itself, after all these years of mediocre and middling results. Next up, Buffalo, 21-35-11. They're 4-5-1 in their last 10. They lost their last game, which was last night against Calgary. They're in Ottawa. 23-32-10. Senators, they're 4-5-1 in their last 10. They won their last game. Anderson's already been confirmed as the starter for Ottawa. And Carlson has got himself up to 49 points, which of course is 7 behind Klingberg. There's always going to be people who state that Erik Karlsson should win the Norris Trophy. If he does end up going on this tear at the end of the season and getting the top spot in points, again, there will be people who state that proves he's a Norris contender and very, very likely a Norris winner. However, I don't see it for him this year. This, of course, is going to be quite the battle because you got one team with 56 points and one with 54. And that would be a great point total if it was the start of January, but it's the start of March. And it's not a great point total for either. Very disappointing season for Ottawa that's coming down to the wire here, and whether or not they're going to finish it near or at the bottom of the league. And if Buffalo goes in and beats them at home tonight, that would be definitely a case for Buffalo potentially passing them. Remember, though, Buffalo right now is 31st. Arizona's got 30th because Arizona's got one game in hand and the same number of points. Ottawa is that close to being at the bottom of the league with those 56 points. It's been a very rough year for Ottawa. And I don't have a whole lot to add to this. I would imagine Leonard starts tonight. I would imagine. I don't know that it matters. Montreal, they're 25-30-11. So they're sitting with 61 points. They're 3-3-4 in their last 10. They've lost their last 2. Florida's 32-25-7, 7-2-1 in their last 10. They lost their last game, but that was the one that they came back and got a point against Tampa. So kind of a moral victory there, if you believe in moral victories, and most teams don't. They're 2 points back of the second wild card. They have 3 games in hand, and it's been confirmed that Roberto Luongo is starting. Why? Because Luongo will start every single game that is important to them during this streak they've been on. And this is important. They went out on the road in Tampa. They lost. Now they're back home. This is their first game home after that loss. And I don't see it throwing Reimer in. Reimer may go into their next game, but Luongo goes into this one. Florida is on the cusp of not just being relevant and a good story, but actually being a playoff team. What's holding them back is that Columbus has picked it up over their last couple of games, and New Jersey's a 500 team for the most part, and it's hard to catch up to teams that are playing win, lose, win, lose. It's hard to catch up when you are as far back as Florida was at the start of this run of theirs. But that being said, I do think that they can get up there and potentially do some damage. I've said it before, I wouldn't necessarily want to play Florida in the playoffs. They're not going to end up with home ice, obviously. The best they can hope for is a number one wildcard spot. But they would be a very good test for either Tampa or Pittsburgh in the first round if those are the division winners. And who knows? Maybe Florida, who are a long overdue first Cinderella run, like the one in '96, maybe they're ready for another one. But tonight's going to go a long way to telling us whether this streak has been real or not, because if they lose to Montreal tonight, then it'll cause some concern that maybe they overextend themselves in that winning streak, and maybe they're due for another fallback, much like Philly, much like Columbus has done this year, or Jersey, hot and cold. Florida can't afford a cold streak, not at all. And Montreal is playing spoiler, but without Pacioretty and without Weber and without Carey Price. That's quite the list of players. The Rangers. The Rangers are 30-31-6. They're 3-6-1 in their last 10. They lost their last game. That was, of course, at home against Winnipeg. They're 7 points back of the number 2 wild card. They have the number 7 penalty kill in the NHL. They're in Tampa, so they're in against the Lightning, who are 46-17-4. They're 8-1-1 in their last 10. They've won their last 3 in a row. They are first in the division, 6 points ahead of Boston. Kucherov has 86 points to lead the way in the NHL and is on his way to a scoring title. Hedman has 49 points, and there is a lot of talk about him winning the Norris Trophy this year. They have the number 3 power play in the NHL, and they will get a chance to put it up against the number 7 penalty kill of the Rangers. And usually a good penalty kill will beat a good power play. But Tampa's, with the number of offensive weapons they have, the addition of JT Miller, and the fact that this is JT Miller's first game against the Rangers, it's Nemesnikov's first game against Tampa, it's going to be an interesting storyline tonight, and I'll keep a close eye on this one, because this is guys who just got traded for each other going up against each other, and very often you'll see them play very well, because they want to prove the GM that traded for them was right, the GM that traded them away was wrong. And Nemesnikov, I think, will probably have a very good game for the Rangers. I don't know that equals an upset victory for the Rangers, but it shouldn't be a blowout. Neither goaltender's been confirmed, but Vasilevsky, who I've talked about for most of the year as potentially being and probably being the Vezina winner, his stats have started to slip somewhat, and Pekka Rinne is now, I would say, if he's not the favorite for Vezina, he should be. Maybe Vasilevsky still gets that award, but I do think Rinne is going to come out and somehow get a Vezina trophy in his mid-30s, which would be quite the accomplishment. But Vasilevsky probably starts tonight. It'll probably be Lundqvist, who's putting up half-decent totals considering how much they bloody play him. They play him so much at his age. It's just, it's crazy. Next up, Detroit. The Red Wings are 26-29-11. They're 3-5-2 in their last 10. They've lost their last 4. Well, who's coming in to play them? Vegas. Golden Knights are 42-19-5. They're 5-4-1 in their last 10. They lost their last game, of course. They've lost 4 out of 5. They're first in their division. They're 9 points ahead of Anaheim, so that'll be weird for them that it's single digits, because it's been 10 points or more for most of the year. But it doesn't matter. They're not losing their division. They have the number 8 power play in the league. Detroit is 10 points behind wild card, and I didn't track teams that are more than 10 points out of the wild card spot. Howard's the likely starter tonight for Detroit. I can see Fleury getting the start, but this does feel kind of like Legace should probably go in there, because I do think Fleury's been played a lot, and I think his stats have started to look kind of iffy. And maybe this is a game where you throw in Legace. Nothing's confirmed as of now, though, but I would be very surprised if Vegas doesn't win this. And yet, and I've pointed this out before, right now at that 26-29 record for Detroit, they're 3 games below 500 if you don't count those 11 losses in overtime. And they don't fall very far below that. So it wouldn't entirely surprise me to see Vegas lose 5 out of 6, potentially in overtime, because Detroit needs to get their overtime record straightened out, and see Detroit win that and get within 2 games of 500. Because Detroit's been weird all year, where they go on little mini winning streaks just to make sure they get back to 500, and then they just dive right back under it again. And for Vegas, and I don't have Karlsson up there, but Karlsson's got 35 goals, which is insane. There's some players putting up very good seasons in Vegas. And again, the one thing I'm wondering is this 4 out of 5 they've lost. Did the chemistry get thrown off at the trade deadline? We will definitely be talking about that going into the playoffs. Next up, so you've got Anaheim, 34, 21, and 12. They're 7-2-1 in their last 10. They've won their last 3. They're second in their division. They're 1 point ahead of San Jose. They have the number 4 penalty kill in the league. Nashville is 43, 14, and 9. They're 9-1 in their last 10. And those 9 are all wins in a row. So they've won 9 in a row. They're first. They're 6 points ahead of Winnipeg. PK Subban has 50 points. He's in the Norris conversation. And they have the number 4 power play in the NHL. So the number 4 power play goes up against the number 4 penalty kill. Nashville is... they're making a case that they should be the Stanley Cup favorites this year. And this is a great test for the Anaheim Ducks. The Anaheim Ducks have been on a very solid run. As I said, 7-2-1 in their last 10. It'll be Gibson tonight against, I would think, Rene. Not that it necessarily matters too much. Saros has been very good for them over the last couple of months, so if they went with Saros tonight for some reason, it wouldn't affect whether or not I thought Nashville could make it 10. But remember, this is a record winning streak for the Predators. Every win they get after this would be gravy. They could get 10, which would equal Philly from earlier this year. But again, it's the Ducks. It's after the All-Star break, and the Ducks are a very good team after the All-Star break most seasons. And this year hasn't been any different. This is probably going to be the game of the night. That being said, Nashville has been capable of putting up a bunch of goals and putting up some lopsided results. And I may eat those words by the end of tonight, but I'll stick with that for now. I'll say, yeah, game of the night, probably the Predators and the Ducks. And the Predators with their fantastic defense, Anaheim with just a really solid team game. Kessler's not doing it on the score sheet right now, but he's doing it defensively and with body checks and just face-offs and just being Ryan Kessler. And I've talked about how I don't really like Ryan Kessler, but you know what? I don't take anything away from him as a two-way forward. And, you know, he's always a legit Selke Trophy threat. He hasn't played enough games this year for that. And his totals haven't been where they need to be for him to get that consideration this year. But he's played very well when he has played. So I will give him that. Carolina. So the Canes coming off of that horrific loss to Minnesota. 29, 27, and 11. They're 2-6-2 in their last 10. They've lost their last 2. They're 4 points back of the wild card, and they fired their general manager. I know, Ron Francis got promoted out of his job. That means they fired him. Carolina's in Chicago. Chicago's 29, 30, and 8. They're 5-5 in their last 10. They won their last game. Berube has been confirmed as the starter for tonight's game for Chicago. And this is going to be an interesting one. So you've got Chicago, who have pride. They are 5-5 in their last 10. They've played relatively well considering their goaltending issues. And you've got Carolina, who look like they're in free fall. And I don't know what's gone on in Carolina. And I don't know that necessarily, if Tom Dundon wants to have just complete control and he wants to run it like the Mavericks are run, that's fine. I don't know that works with a hockey team. I mean, it may work in basketball. Basketball is a much smaller roster. It's a completely different sport. Basketball is a game where you can just have one really good player that transforms the whole team. And yet, and in basketball, you can have 2 really, really solid players who are fantastic, and it can turn your team around. Hockey doesn't really work that way. Hockey, you got a larger roster. You got a more complicated game, I think, than basketball. And I don't know that you can run a team the same. Dundon's going to take a shot at it. He's paid his money. He owns the team. He has the right to do that. But it'll be interesting to see if, starting tonight, if Carolina's results look any better, if they get worse, If this is a, well, we'll just bottom out the rest of the year, and then next year we'll make the playoffs. For Carolina fans, though, it has to feel very repetitive here, that every year it's get close and then fall out again. So not wanting to do that, maybe Dundon's got a plan here that's going to work. You know, because owners micromanaging a team can only be good for them, right? Can only be good for a team when you have an owner that steps in and manages things. Just tells a GM what to do, and then says, "I don't do that. I don't tell a GM what to do. I just tell him he's fired if he doesn't do what I do, or what I tell him to." All right, the Islanders, 29-29-9. They're 2-5-3 in their last 10. They've lost their last 7 in a row. They're 6 points back of the second wild card. It's fading fast. The Islanders are 28, or the Oilers are 28-34-4. They're 5-5 in their last 10. They won their last game. McDavid has 80 points right now. He sits 6 points behind the league leader Kucherov, and I'm not ruling him out for the Art Ross because that's how McDavid plays. Last year he got the Art Ross out of nowhere. It was just suddenly he's the winner, and you're like, oh, okay, because he was lingering around there up until the last, 10, 15 games, and then he ran away with it. So I'm not ruling out McDavid doing it again, and a game against the Islanders can help. The Islanders' defense has been, shall we say, not fantastic. Their goaltending has been spotty, and this is a team that... how did Garth Snow outlive Ron Francis as GM? I mean, it was asked last night in the comments, but I'm asking that too. I don't get it. Maybe Dundon needs to take over the Islanders too. But they're in against the Oilers. This is going to be the battle of the orange and blue teams, and... two teams as well. I mean, the Oilers aren't making the playoffs. We know that. The Islanders probably shouldn't make the playoffs, but since they're 6 points back, and since teams ahead of them that are in the playoffs are prone to some bad runs, like Columbus and Jersey still young, I'm not ruling them out, but I'm pretty darn close to ruling them out because, yeah, this has been an ugly year for both the Islanders and the Oilers. And the question I'm starting to ask myself now is, with these 7 losses in a row and with nothing being done to address the issues with the Islanders at the deadline, does that mean that Tavares is on his way out? Is Tavares legitimately on his way out of the city? And what would that do to the team as they go into Belmont and as they try to get momentum as a franchise? What would losing Tavares do? If they save that cap space, are they able to go out and get somebody else? Do they completely revamp and redo the face of the franchise? What do they do? And for the Oilers, it's just better luck next year again. San Jose and St. Louis. St. Louis comes in with a 35-26-5 record, but they're 2-6-2 in their last 10. They lost their last game. They've lost a lot of games. They're 2 points back of the second wild card, and they have no room for error. San Jose's 35-22-9. They're 5-4-1 in their last 10. They lost their last game. They're third in the division. They're 2 points ahead of LA. Burns has 52 points, so he's 4 points back of Klingberg for the league lead. Of course, Burns. I still think if he ends up with the league lead in points, he's going to get Norris votes. I don't know how many, but he'll get some. His plus-minus is up to plus 19, which is better than it was a couple of weeks ago, and I know that's going to drag him down, and it means he probably doesn't win it, but who knows. San Jose has the #1 penalty kill in the NHL, and California teams have very good penalty kills. Anaheim's at number 4, San Jose's at number 3, and LA's at number 2. So 3 of the top 4 penalty kills in the league belong to the California teams. And this is it. California is the Death Valley of the NHL, and the Western Canadian teams are the welcome. Would you like your 2 points served now or during the... Okay, here you go. We're giving them to you before the game. And San Jose being at home, this should help them. They've got a team in St. Louis coming in, however, that's very hungry and should be ready for wins. I would imagine it'll be Hutton and Jones tonight. I'd be kind of surprised if it wasn't. If you're a fan of the Blues, stay up and watch this game because this could very well be one that makes that decision of whether or not they're making the playoffs. They're behind Colorado. They're behind LA. They have to get this win. They can't rely on other teams losing when they lose. They have to get this win and hope that those teams lose as well. For San Jose now is behind Anaheim, which is going to feel weird for them because number 2 has been theirs for a while. And they're only 2 points ahead of LA, which means that a loss here and a win by LA, suddenly San Jose might be in a wild card spot as soon as Saturday. So this is a win they need against a team that's been playing poorly. However, they should be hungry, and Hutton should be due for a good game. That could be a very good game. It could be one of the best games of the night as well. But still, I think Anaheim and Nashville is probably the best game of the night. And finally, last but not least, Washington. 37, 22, and 7. They're 5-5 in their last 10. They lost their last game. They're second in the division. They're 1 point behind Pittsburgh. Ovechkin has 40 goals. He's still the leader for the Rocket Richard Trophy. He has to be looking over his shoulder at Laine right behind him, and Malkin's right behind him with 38 goals as well. Carlson has 53 points. Carlson's 3 points behind Klingberg for the lead among defensemen in points. And they have the number 5 power play in the NHL. They're in against the Kings. The Kings are 36, 25, and 5. They're 6-4 in their last 10. They lost their last game. They are the number 2 wild card, and they're tied with Colorado. The reason they have the wild card spot ahead of Colorado right now is they have more wins. Their number 2 penalty kill, I mentioned earlier. You go into LA, you're going in against a team that is very good at killing those penalties, and Washington's a team that's very good on the power play. This is a game where I would expect Ovechkin to come out solid and maybe get a couple of goals, because he's got to be paying attention to what's going on with the goal scoring race and know that he's potentially falling behind this kid, this Laine kid that came out of nowhere. It's not that long ago we were talking about his Laine having a bit of a sophomore slump. He's not very good 5-on-5. Now if he wins the Rocket Richard Trophy, I think all that's going to be forgotten. And for Washington, this is a big test. The Washington Capitals have been mediocre for over a month, and that mediocrity has meant that they've lost their lead over Pittsburgh. They're behind Pittsburgh now. If Philly had been able to win over their last 4 games, then Washington's looking up at Philly in the standings, and they're third. And then we would be talking about whether or not Washington can stay ahead of teams like New Jersey and Columbus. Washington's not in that conversation yet, but games like tonight's can very well get them there. They need to win this one. They need to win in LA. LA's been good at home. They've been good on the road. The records are very similar at home or on the road, and Washington needs to pick it up. So we'll see if they can. We'll see if they will. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Thank you very much for watching. Hit like and subscribe. If you're browsing your way through, you just happened upon this video. Very close to 31,000 subs here. Not close to 3,000 on the Entertainment Guy channel, but it's the little channel that could. And yeah, so thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you again soon.